Welcome, everyone, to the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority Board of Directors meeting. We're at the Carson City Community Center in the Sierra Room. It's Monday, March 11th at 4 p.m. So with that, Linda, can we get a call to order?
Yes, Trish Trennerwith,
Present.
Mike Riggs,
Present.
Mike Jones,
Present?
Mike Santos.
Present.
Stacy Giomi is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. If I could ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. At this time, invite any public comment. Anyone that would like to address anything with this board or anything on the agenda. Now's the time.
Hi, I'm Sharon Ross with Capital City Arts Initiative. Thank you for the time to make a public comment. I want to introduce the new exhibition here in the Sierra Room. It's The Lay of the Land, black and white photography by Fred Howland, who's a local artist. I hope you enjoy the photographs. I think he's done a beautiful job with these black and white photographs. The other thing that there will be a party. I know you will have seen the show, but if you want to meet the artist and hear him talk, we're going to have Friday, March 29th from 5 to 7. We'll have a reception in here, and he'll do a short gallery talk about his work at 5:30. Also, CCAI does a series we call Nevada Neighbors of speakers we bring in. Paul Baker Prindle's going to be speaking on March 26th at the Brick. UNR opened a new art museum, so he's going to give us a virtual tour of the art museum. So we'd love to have you join us for that. Photo Finished is our exhibition of Carson High's advanced photography students. It's over at the Brick. It's up through March 28th. If you haven't seen it, do stop by. It's in the lobby in the back conference room. Kara Farron's students did a beautiful job. And the following show is a group high school show by Carson, Douglas, Dayton, and Pioneer High School students. And we're going to open that on April 10th, and you're invited. And it's fun to see the high school kids come in for a show, and none of them really know what to expect in an art opening, but they come in with bright eyes and big smiles. So it's fun to be there. That's from 5 to 6:30 on April 10th. So thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
Good evening.
Hi.
Yes, my name is Kelly Clark, and I'm here representing Bee City USA number 76 for Carson City. As you may know, Carson City has been most recently named a Bee City. We are the first city in the state to receive this recognition, and it's a process that took a few years, but Carson City and a local group of beekeepers, the Great Basin Beekeepers of Nevada, have really worked hard to make Carson City a Bee City USA. And one of the requirements is to hold educational events and to teach the public about the value of pollinators in the community. And so we've really hit the ground running. We have planned an Earth Day celebration coming up on April the 28th. This is a very small version of the poster that we've been working on together with Carson Tourism Authority. Thank you very much for your assistance with this effort. And we wanted to let you know that we're very eager to make this an ongoing event. This year it will be on April 28th from 10 to 3 at the Roberts House. We already have 15 exhibitors that are interested in being there. We know that the weather could be an issue, and so we're only holding reservations for 10. If the weather's good, we'll go ahead and be outside and we'll have a full lawn full of exhibitors. The folks that we're inviting are Greenhouse Garden Center, Evergreen Jeans to have plants. We're also inviting local nonprofits that are involved in the community. Bee City USA will be there with information for the public. We're really wanting to educate families and children in particular about how integrated pest management can be beneficial. People can manage their landscape issues without using some of the heavy-duty pesticides that are dangerous for pollinators. And the other thing is that we will have a couple of speakers throughout the day. One of our partners is the Open Space Advisory Committee here in Carson City. You might have heard that they're developing a pollinator garden up at the north end of town behind the hospital. And so Lindsay, let's see if I have the name right. There's so many Lindsay's right now. I think it's Lindsay Boyer is our representative, and she will be talking about integrated pest management. Dave Ruff from Greenhouse Garden Center will be there to talk about pollinators and what people can do in the garden. And so we just wanted to come here today and thank you for your assistance and your support, getting the materials printed. A little miniature poster of this will be in every school peachy in the Carson City School District. And we're hoping, we can already see, we've had a lot of disappointed exhibitors, and I've really tried to use a soft touch, but we believe we're going to need to expand for next year. We will be promoting this in the Reno News and Review, the Reno Gazette-Journal, along with Carson Now and our local Nevada Appeal. So I don't know that it's going to be building room nights right away, but hopefully in the future we'll start to have more, we may have more events that could, of this type, that could tie into your tourism activities. So, and if you have any questions, Kelly Clark, I'm happy to attempt to answer any. I am not the president of Bee City USA or the director. Jillian, back here in the back of the room, this is our erstwhile leader, and she's been a member of Great Basin Beekeepers and is our director for Bee City USA.
Well, thank you for, it sounds like it's going to be a wonderful event. I'll be thinking positive thoughts about the weather for you. I'm glad we could help out, even if in a small way, with helping with printing. And it's good to know we're a Bee City. So that's great.
That's right. We're hoping that this could be a little bit more of a little piece of branding, possibly some of the merchants who want to promote Carson City as a Bee City USA number 76 can start, we can start working toward that.
It's a good start,
Yeah.
right? You got to start somewhere.
That's
Like I said,
right.
we're starting small, and hopefully it grows into something, more than we all imagined, I hope.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yes, so are these beehives on the outer part of the city, or are they actually located downtown?
I can't speak for where all of the beehives are. I am a beekeeper and I live on the edge of Lampa pasture. So, but the city's regulations state when and where beehives can be placed. Right now, we do not have any official locations with the city for placement of beehives. That gets into some tricky territory, and we know that there are some people who are allergic, and so we have not worked on that yet. What we are trying to do is work very closely with the city as the controls are put out there in terms of controlling for bugs and insects and things like that. So we're really trying to elevate that relationship so that beekeepers are more aware and the city staff are more aware of where beehives are located. So we're just trying to work in collaboration more. But yeah, there are beekeepers. I know a lot of beekeepers all over town, and I just off the top of my head, I know 10 or 12 that are within city limits. So,
Thank you.
Hey, Kelly, you said that you're going to limit this to 10 vendors to start with, just because of the room.
yeah.
And are any of these vendors from out of the area? They're pretty much local. And have you had interest from outside the area? Maybe somebody wants to come see what we're doing here or what's going on here, that kind of thing?
So first, all of the vendors that we're inviting this year are from Carson City. The Carson Open Space and Parks and Recreation are invited. A number of others who had participated in last year's Earth Day celebration that were of environmental education type groups like Cooperative Extension were invited. We haven't extended it beyond at this point because literally there's just not enough space. And, we're considering that if it is bad weather, and please keep your prayers out there for us for nice blue skies, but if it is inclement weather, we will be in the carriage house. And that is a tiny space. I mean, it's a wonderful space, but it's a very small space. And to answer the second part of your question, we have had interest from outside. In fact, there is a national, you find out about these things after you start an event like this, but there's a local bugs group that's in Reno that would like to come. And there's also a monarch butterfly group in Washoe Valley that 2 or 3 people have recommended that I contact, and they are very actively trying to promote use of milkweed as a plant that monarchs use, because monarch numbers are way down since last year. And so, yes, there is interest from outside. We don't know how much. Once we get into, once we start exploring what we're going to do next year, we'll evaluate how far out we spread. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you, Kelly.
All right. Thank you very much.
With that, we'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, possible action to approve the minutes of the February 11th, 2019 CTA board meeting. Unless there's anything that needs to be changed, I move for a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Motion passed. Possible action, the adoption of the agenda. I don't see any reason. Right. Anyway, the adoption of the agenda, I don't see any reason to move anything around on the agenda unless anybody has something that needs to be moved. I suggest we go as it was published. So that takes us to action item 7 for possible action to consider accepting the engagement letter from Beth Cohn Cole, CPA of Edie Bailey LLP for the fiscal year 2019 audit, and to designate Edie Bailey LLP as the auditing firm for the fiscal year 2019. Chris?
So okay, we're good. So as per NRS 354-624, we're required to designate an auditor within 3 months of the end of the fiscal year. So by the 31st of this month, we need to let taxation know who our auditor is going to be. Beth Cohn has been our auditor for quite a few years. She just recently moved from her own CPA office to Ide Bailey LLP. She's still interested in doing our audit for us. She's been working with us even when we had our own accounting. It wasn't with the city. She helped us transfer into the city's accounting. She's worked with the city well. She works with VNT well. So I'd like to continue to work with her. And she provided this letter so that you guys knew what she was going to be providing. The fiscal impact is $10,290, which I'll include in the fiscal year 19 budget, which is right in line with what we've been paying in the past. Do you have any questions about any of it?
No, we've used them for several years, and they've done an excellent job for us. So, very timely, and they do a great job. I'll open up if there's any questions from the other board members.
Awesome, thank you.
Hearing none, if I can get a motion to approve?
I move to accept the engagement letter of Edie Bailey LLP pursuant to NRS 354-624 for the audits of fiscal year 2019 and to designate Edie Bailey LLP as the auditing firm for fiscal year 2019.
Can I get a second?
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. On to agenda item 8 for possible action to select KPS3 and Computer Artistry as the most appropriate bidders as a result of the CCCTA request for proposal RFP 1920-101 for creative content development and public relations and external communication, and to direct staff to draft agreements with terms consistent with the RFP number 1920-101 and the proposal submitted by the selected bidders. David, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Chair Jones. For the record, David Peterson, Executive Director of the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority. So we undertook the first of its kind RFP process for content, creative development content and public relations, external communications. As a result of that process, we had 5 different proposals that the evaluation committee did review based on their technical and cost submissions. So in front of the board today, for your consideration, are the 2 firms that Chair Jones recognized, KPS3 and Computer Artistry, for consideration to allow me to negotiate contracts with both of those firms. And this was a very hard, difficult process, that we went through. Nevada Momentum has done an amazing job, as far as the brand and where we're at, as Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority. And they were one of the top 2 that we did bring back to hear from them in person. And I want to thank them, obviously, for all their hard work for the last several years. But it was not an easy process to go through. And
No, I want to just jump in there. I've been in the hospitality casino business for longer than I'd like to think about, but close to 40 years, and made a lot of decisions in that time. And I will tell you, this decision was one of the hardest I've ever made, because both firms came in extremely well prepared, very knowledgeable in their fields, and I just want to thank Nevada Momentum for being so professional and getting. It was just very, very tough decision. Could have gone either way, but I wanted a part of the selection committee. I can honestly say it was very difficult. Go ahead, David.
for the record, David Peterson. So yes, agreed, concur completely. So this agenda item in front of you today allows us to move forward with KPS3 in terms of the CTA's creative development, content development, and public relations, external communications. With Computer Artistry, Tara Burke, the committee wanted to do a contract with her as a result of this process to be able to have her on the side for the events, the various events that we support in Carson City from a graphic artist design perspective. And so that's the difference. I just want to clarify with the 2 contracts, as KPS3 is the CTA's, would be the CTA's vendor of record for, again, our creative execution, content development, public relations, external communications, and then Computer Artistry, we will work a contract out with Tara for the events that we support here in Carson City. So I just wanted to provide that clarification as well as to why there are 2 contracts for your consideration today.
Any questions from the board? I see we have some KPS3 folks out there. If there's any questions, I'm sure they'll be happy to answer.
Well, I'm pretty sure you must have worked them over really good. I might.
You see, they're all afraid to come up front.
Yeah, they're sitting all the way in the back. Well, I assume that you guys, that they met all the requirements that were on. So with that, I say, let's move forward.
All right, with that, can I get a motion to approve?
Okay, right here, discussion. All right, I'll make the motion to, approve the discussion and possible action to select KP, S3, and Computer Artistry as the most appropriate bidders as a result of the CTA request for proposal RFP for 1920-101 for creative content development, public relations, external communications, and to direct staff and draft agreements with terms consistent with the RFP number 1920-101 and the proposal submitted by the selected bidders.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Well, welcome aboard. Thank you. Now we'll move to action item 9 to approve the CTA statement of accounts payable, checks, and P-card report for January 2019. David?
Thank you, Chair Jones. For the record, David Peterson. In front of you, you have the activity statements for accounts payable, checks totaling $59,024.03, and P-card purchases totaling $12,259.20 for January 2019. I'm going to hit the highlights on the check side of things first. Oops, there we go. Okay, so for the month of January, we have the All World Sports payment for $20,000. If you recall, we brought that in front of the board back in January, and that assists with their marketing efforts. So that's us providing that allocation to them, and they use that obviously to support the different sports tournaments in Carson City. So that was a $20,000 payment. The Bank of America payment of just over $9,700. Those were the P-card charges that I presented last month. So remember, there's always this lag from month to month based on the timing of when things close and when the checks are issued by City of Carson City. The Konica Minolta charges are the base fees for those respective months as a part of the lease agreement that we have in place. Under my executive director report, I'm going to come back to this item based on what was brought up at last month's meeting with the overages that you saw on the last report. So if you don't mind, I'd rather address that at that time. The Nevada Magazine payment for $1,950. That is the January-February issue of Nevada Magazine. That was a half-page ad, and that was paid for through a grant from Travel Nevada. On the Nevada Momentum front, just under $5,000. That was photography and content with Kat, Terry, and the team through the end of December. About $2,500 of that was for the visitor's guide. That was the new one that we presented last board meeting in February. And then the remainder of that was for various grant projects, including the dining guide, and the winter video, along with some other edits that were going on. And then the last couple of things, the final payments to Joel. So again, he was paid on a weekly basis. So you'll see all payments now are final as of 1/19 with that last payment. So that concludes the contract that was in place with Joel. And then the last one I just point out is Sierra Nevada Media Group for the targeted internet ads that ran back in December. Any questions on the checks before I move on to the P-card? Okay, thank you. So again, for the record, Dave Peterson. On the P-card front, we have a $3,500 charge. That was the half-page ad. Oh, sorry. Let me go back to page 1 and hit the highlight there. Yep, my apologies. I got ahead of everybody. So you'll see travel industry partners, it says Pineapple Trend Report, Smart Travel News subscription. So that's an annual subscription that I've brought on board for the staff with London Tourism Publications. This is a gentleman I know very well. It was a subscription that I had for myself and my whole team with the state. And it's great information, economic trends, different social media trends, what's going on nationally. He even comments on Nevada-specific events and things that are going on. And I would welcome the opportunity to bring you all as board members on as well. So you're able to receive the daily emails and the monthly reports as well. The only reason I haven't done that is we're still having some email-related issues. So Chris is actually the last person on the team that still can't get the emails. But I would love to be able to allow all of you the opportunity to share in this subscription because it's great information. And Lydia picked up something, I think it was Flip2, that came out of one of the articles that we're looking at an opportunity maybe with them. And so it's a great way to have access to national level data and information. And we can also, as a result of our subscription as well, engage in weekly calls if there's a particular topic or issue that we want to, have a meeting on the phone or through Skype with Mr. Brian London. He'll tackle that for us as well. So that's the $1,904. I know this is the first time you guys are seeing it, so I just wanted to give you some background on that particular charge. And then back to page 2. The $3,500, that was for the half-page ad in the National, which is the Amtrak magazine. And then Reach Local, which you'll see as the last item, that's for the Geofence digital ad targeting campaign that ran a month ago as well. So that's all I was going to highlight as far as the P-card statement. Are there any questions about that?
Trish?
Hey, David, in that Amtrak ad that we ran, that $3,500 was a half-page ad. Where in the magazine were we placed? Just curious.
For the record, Dave Peterson, I'm going to let Lydia address that question.
It was a really interesting placement. To be clear, though, that was had exposure to over 3 million people. It went on every Amtrak in America. So the exposure for that was much larger than you normally get with that kind of pay on an ad. But we were towards the back. It wasn't my favorite placement I've seen. It was this outdoor adventure kind of feature that I feel like was a little awkward. So I love the publication. I feel like I would do it again, but make sure that we have a specific placement in it or have more clarification before we do that.
It sounds like for $3,500, reaching what you said, 3 million people.
Mm-hmm.
I think
In a captivated audience, they're literally stuck in their seat with that in front of them. So that was one of the reasons why we wanted to go with it.
perfect. Thank you.
And if I may add, Dave Peterson for the record, as Lydia said, these folks are right there on the train, and it was a fantastic ad. And I don't know, Lydia, we probably don't have the ad, but it was the one with the balloons, I think, right from the balloon. Oh, we did.
Yes,
We
in
did
the
show it.
packet in the
That's
last
right. We
meeting.
did show it last meeting. So I thought it conveyed Carson City very well, to that group of people. So it was a good ad. Just we're going to work on getting the placement shifted a little bit, and maybe we can get next to some specific content is what I would like to see in the magazine that would make sense for Carson City relative to our ad. So.
Any other questions on the P-card report? Hearing no other questions, can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the CTA account activity statement of accounts payable checks and P-card charges for January 2019.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion approved. Now on to action item 10, to approve the adjusted CTA fiscal year 19 budget report. David?
Thank you, Chair Jones. For the record, Dave Peterson. What you have in front of you in your packet is the comparative statement of adjusted revenue totaling $1,222,087.91, expenses totaling $767,812.60, and a fund balance for all CTA fund totaling $2,080,882.31. And I'll walk through and hit the highlights on the report in your packet. So this is the 7th accounting period of the fiscal year, being through January. We're sitting at about 58% of the fiscal year 19, having passed us by. If you look at the room tax revenue payments, those are received again through the 31st of January, but those are really based on the first 6 months of collections. So the business activity that's occurred through December, because there's a lag in terms of the remittance of those collections and a couple of other issues by the time we get them and we load them and key them in and we verify the information. So I just want to remind everybody of the time periods that we're talking about. So total revenue is $1,222,087.91. So we're tracking very closely. We're sitting at just under 57% of our projection for the year. And again, we're sitting at 58%, 7 accounting periods into the fiscal year. If you'll turn to page 3, again, on the arts and culture, on the interlocal agreement, those are the payments that have been made thus far, along with the NCOT, the 3/8 of 1%, again, that goes to fund Travel Nevada. And I think, Chris, we're maybe a payment or so off on that, but again, it's just the timing of everything when we get the collections in and then we make that remittance back to the state and to the Division of Tourism. So on the salaries front, we're sitting at $220,000 actual year to date. That's tracking at just over 42%. So again, with me coming on board as the new executive director, this will start to catch up because Joel was here, but he was in as a contractor, so the accounting for that was outside of the salaries, wages section of the budget. So we'll slowly catch up as the fiscal year progresses on that front. If you'll turn to page 4, the line item for the Konica printer is the office equipment, rental and lease. We are tracking high, as you can see, at 78%. I'm going to address this under my executive director report. I have some good news to report on that, but I'd like to handle that under the executive director report, if I may, Chair Jones.
Yeah, I'll cover that there.
Thank you. And then on special events, so we are paid in full for Carson City Off-Road. Both payments have been made to Epic, so that reflects in the 38. Is that right, Chris? Yeah, $38,631. So our service and supplies total thus far is tracking at just over $414,000, or 50.5% of our projection for fiscal year 19. And then page 5, that's the page that kind of rolls up everything as it relates to Department of Taxation. So with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to address any questions. Chris and I did, our commitment to you at the last board meeting was to go and make some adjustments in the projections column based on where we know expenditures are going to be and not be, and we also made the adjustments for grant-related expenditures as well. And so you'll see those reflected in here, and we will continue to do that as actual expenditures come in and as we make any changes each month. We'll make sure that we're kind of fine-tuning the projection for the fiscal year. So with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Any questions or concerns from the board?
Am I seeing this right? We've got a pretty good power bill going on, huh?
Yeah, so for the record, Dave Peterson, yeah, looking at being at 62% of the year, yeah, I'm not sure how to forecast the consumption, power consumption, as those charges come in. They come in as they come in. We've had obviously a very cold winter, and I think that would be reflected in here, 3-4 percentage points higher than where we're at in terms of the fiscal year being 7 periods in. But that's a tough one to try and forecast. We'll make the adjustment, though, if it looks like we're going to continue to push and go over that $5,000. We'll definitely make the adjustment if it's necessary. Wow, you guys. But But yeah, we're tracking a little higher, but I attribute that just to the weather. And that's the storage. Yeah. And that includes, okay, Chris is right, that also includes the storage unit power as well, that we have off on Highway 50. So again, I think with it being as cold as it's been and the weather, it's pushing us a little higher than what was originally projected. I'm not too concerned right now, because I think we can still make adjustments as we finish the fiscal year.
Yeah, I think, we've had a cold, kind of long winter. If it's this way in July, we'll be in trouble. Any other questions?
I have a question, just on the trade shows and golf projects. We haven't really done a lot with that. Is there something coming this spring or towards the end of this fiscal year that we are doing with trade shows or golf?
So I'm going to pass it over to Lydia to address what we've done from a marketing perspective, if I may, Trish, for the record, Dave Peterson, sorry. She's going to explain exactly where we're at with that.
Sure. We have done a golf project, and the publication actually just came out, and it's with the magazine Golf Nevada. And so the $3,300 that we spent on that included a full page ad for just from a tourism perspective. And that was actually within the third page of the book, which is really, really excited about on that front. But it also included 3 full page ads for our 3 golf courses in Carson City. So really we had 4 pages of exposure on top of some of the other partners that paid to get into that magazine too. So there is quite a bit of exposure for Carson City in that. So we have done some golf projects. However, I feel like that was itemized in a different way, and that's where Dave can take over.
Yeah, so, and for the record, Dave Peterson, Trish, to address the trade show piece of this, the reason that I dropped this down to the $1,000, as I'm looking at the staff and preparing in terms of strategic planning moving forward, looking at addressing a sales piece to what James does, more in a, not just events, but a sales and events piece. We're not there yet, and I want to take a deliberate approach to looking at trade shows that make sense domestically, internationally, sales mission participation as well. Where can we come into play with Travel Nevada or the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority, kind of get the biggest bang for our buck? If there are opportunities where the only costs that we may need to incur are travel, because they're already covering either booth fees or registration fees. So we're looking at that and preparing for fiscal 20. And I just didn't feel right now that just kind of throwing either me out there or James out there, it would make sense until we have a full plan of attack and we can kind of chart the fiscal year out and what makes sense. So that's why I reduced that down to just that $1,000 that you see there, in case there is something small scale that comes up and maybe it's, local within a range and we're just talking about small travel, gas, whatever the case may be. I just want to have a little bit of money there.
Okay, thank you.
And on the golf projects, that $8,800, that was when we had Divine Nine, and we actually paid a membership fee into it. And Divine Nine's been dissolved, so we just moved that into marketing, and then Lydia started moving some of that over to take care of our golf courses here in town. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions? And can I get a motion?
I move to approve the adjusted CTA F19 budget report as it stands.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Now moving on to agenda item 11, monthly non-action items for presentation and discussion only. David, do you want to start us off?
Thank you, Chair Jones. For the record, David Peterson. So the second RFP that we currently have out there is for the web digital development, CRM, e-marketing efforts that we're going to undertake as we move forward. It is due this Wednesday, so the bids will be coming in on Wednesday. I'm happy to say that we've had, I think it was 44 questions from 5 different potential bidders on the RFP. And my thanks to Lydia for helping answer these questions, because there were a lot and they were very technical in nature. In terms of where things stand moving forward, we're going to convene an evaluation committee. And again, this is kind of based on schedules of the various members on the 25th of March. And then the evaluation committee will recommend that vendor to be brought forward to all of you for consideration to allow me to work on negotiating a contract. And so then we'll come back in May. And I know this puts us a month behind what I originally thought was going to be the case, but I think we're still going to be okay from that perspective. So I just wanted to bring the board up to speed on what's happening with the web development RFP. And then if I can switch gears, the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee met on March 4th, and one of the topics was the Blue Line, which has come up before in terms of the $26,000 that was sitting on their books. It had been moved forward, I think, from fiscal 17 to 18 to 19. I'm happy and pleased to say that the Blue Line, the dollars, most of those dollars actually, will be used to remove said Blue Line, both the old existing one that was the thick material, the gritty material, as well as the sort of the painted in sections. All of that will be removed using those dollars. And then the CTA, we will work with the chamber. We're going to work with Carson City Historic Preservation Society to come up with the signage as we move forward and identify a plan for that process to begin, trying to tap into grant funds that are available through the state with projects relating to tourism. There's some transportation alternative programming funds that I'm going to take a look at as well to see if we can get some matches, and possibly with the RACC as well, maybe utilizing any leftover dollars or some dollars that they might have as well to be a partner in this to get the signage up and running in place of the actual physical Blue Line itself. So that's just an update in terms of where we're at, what happened at the March 4th meeting with the RACC. So,
David?
yes.
So, and with some of these funds, does that mean that we're gonna come up with some type of a phone app for the Blue Line as well, or is that a whole different?
So, without getting ahead of, for the record, Dave Peterson, without getting ahead of the actual web RFP, I had some great discussions before we released the RFP with different web companies throughout the state. And there may be a way to actually incorporate some beacon technology. And I'm not sure if this is where you're going, but to incorporate some beacon technology into the plaques or the signage or medallions or whatever we may be looking at, to have sort of an augmented reality experience. But even if we're not able to do that, with respect to the new website redesign, it'll be a mobile, responsive mobile friendly design that we're moving forward with. So having the audio on the website, I mean, you know, iPhone, Samsung device, tablet, whatever the case may be, you will still be able to have that experience, right? So you can listen to the different descriptions of each of the buildings. So I don't see that we're going to, and Lydia, if you want to add anything, but I don't see us taking away from that experience. I'm looking at and really excited to see what new technology we can take advantage of to kind of digitize the experience just beyond somebody that has the brochure, the map in their hand, to really, I'd love to have an AR, I guess, experience for those folks that are walking the Kit Carson Trail, so.
So, you know, we have a lot of elderly people that come into town, and utilizing that Blue Line has been very effective way of communication and keeping them on the right track. I have to assume that was heavily discussed and addressed, so we're not losing that group.
For the record, Dave Peterson, yeah. What I have learned is over the past maybe year or so, year and a half, there was another committee that the CTA was involved with. It was one of several people that looked at the removal of the Blue Line. It was actually a recommendation by that committee to remove it and then go with a different kind of wayfinding signage. But I know for a fact that was a part of the conversation, you know, in terms of those folks that really do engage with the blue line, that they tend to skew older, you know, from a visitor standpoint. But the issue is the cost of maintaining the actual physical blue line itself. As you can imagine, most of this $26,000 is going to be used just to remove it, and it's thousands of dollars. You know, I don't want to say tens of thousands of dollars, but my conversation with Public Works, it's cost prohibitive to maintain it, and they want out of that business from a Public Works perspective, to not have to deal with every time, you know, concrete gets replaced, you're putting in the new blue line, or, you know, whatever happens from, you know, shoveling and snow blowers and whatever else the case may be. And it's under the Public Works purview. It's obviously not a CTA. We don't own the sidewalks and the right-of-way, right? And so trying to be good partners with Public Works and figure out a solution that doesn't require this, what really needs to be annual maintenance, as it's been explained to me on the blue line, is where we're moving toward.
All right, well, I just believe that before you remove something, there should already be something in place. And I'm hearing that let's quickly get rid of it and then let's find something to get in place. And I disagree with that, but I guess we don't really have much say-so.
Well, and if I can just, for the record, Dave Peterson, explain the blue line removal. So long as it starts before June 30, that was the only way that the RACC funds were going to be able to be used for the removal. So that process has to start before the end of this fiscal year, because those dollars were not going to be carried forward into fiscal 20. The issue in terms of moving forward with another solution, the grant programs themselves, the project relating to tourism grant program does not open up until November, unfortunately. So there's money sitting in the RACC budget that lapses on June 30. In terms of us engaging with PRT and putting an application in, which I have fully discussed with the Travel Nevada team in terms of a particular project that we're going to bring forward, that doesn't open until November. So I know there's a timing situation here, and you can't pre-commit funds, among other things. From the TAP money, that grant process, which I only learned about the third week of February, actually closed the following week. And so obviously I just could not put together, you know, an appropriate grant request in one day from that perspective. So it's not perfect, I agree. And there's going to be, you know, kind of this transition point for next fiscal year, but I'm committed to working within the parameters of the different grant processes and the timing of those grant programs to secure as much money as we can, you know, as a match. So, but I share the concerns. I know the concerns were echoed to me as well. But again, yes, on the RACC side, those are not dollars that we control, as in the CTA.
Yeah, just look at this money was allocated, I think, 3 years ago. And unfortunately, just got sort of, I want to say, kicked the can down the road and it wasn't addressed. And so now we're at a point where we either are going to lose that money. And I think everybody wants to see the blue line approved and a much nicer experience. And it's the timing that's unfortunate that there's going to be a lapse. But hopefully we come back with a bigger, better, greater blue something, blue line or interactive.
Thank you.
No, of course. For the record, Dave Peterson. The other thing that I want to let everybody know, and you may already know this, is the Carson City Off-Road officially today. The press release went out that it is moving from June 14 to 16 to June 28 to 30. So it's being pushed back a couple of weeks. Obviously, we've had a little bit of snow up there in the Sierras, and hopefully the pushing back by a couple of weeks will allow some of that additional snow, heavy snow, to melt so we can have a great experience for those riders to be up in the mountains where they want to be. And so I just wanted to make everybody aware that that is officially in place. I just signed on the CTA side, the consent, so we can have, I don't want to say it's an amendment to the contract, but a consent document. So the city will sign, and then Todd Sato signs as well, because the way that the contract was written, it specified it was always the third weekend in June. So we have a consent doc that just everybody's acknowledging that we're moving it for this 2019 event. And then a couple things I wanted to follow up from last month's meeting. James and Chris did a great job tackling this Konica Minolta bill. You know, we had several $1,000s of overages that were brought up last month, and I'm happy to confirm that through their hard work, they were able to determine with the accounting and the billing staff at Konica Minolta that pursuant to the lease, they've actually been overcharging us. We're working obviously with the accounting team on the Konica side to determine exactly how much we've been overcharged, because I do believe it probably goes back to the first month of the lease, right? So we're in for 2+ years already, and we're going to work toward getting a check. I don't want a credit, I want to get a check back so we can put that against our budget. So again, I appreciate the concern that was brought up last month's board meeting, but happy and appreciate Chris and James really going in on this to look at the lease, and then those invoices to determine, something was amiss here in terms of the overages. So the only other thing I wanted to add, and I appreciate Ben, our DA, he did go through the fully executed lease to see if there was any possibility, and I know Board Member Riggs mentioned, said it's very hard to get out of these leases, and that it turns out that is the case. In fact, there's not an easy way out, of the lease. And so we've got a little over 2 years, almost maybe 3 years, I think, 2.5, 3 years left on the lease. But Ben was kind enough to go through it and see if there was any possible out, and unfortunately there isn't. So, but we did check into that, and I just wanted to let the board know the status on that.
I think it was a 5-year originally lease.
It is a 60 payment, lease.
It sounds like we fixed it. Thanks, Lydia, for all your hard work. But we have systems in place and checks and balances that we don't get now.
For the record, Dave Peterson, absolutely. So once we figure out what the issue is between what the lease says and then what their accounting or their billing system, how it's billing, why it's billing and the amounts, I don't envision that we'll have any issues moving forward, but we're still trying to figure that out. We know there's a problem. Now it's where is the problem? Which elements of the lease, right? Since there are different components that make up those base fees, and then, if you exceed a certain amount of copies and it's X cents per copy, all that good stuff. So, and then we'll be on it and put the safeguard in place moving forward that we won't be overcharged moving forward. So, And then the last item, I just wanted to mention, Lydia presented the new visitors guide last week, and there was a discussion and dialogue about, getting those guides out, right? We know it's a larger piece, so from a racking distribution standpoint, we really can't do that. But again, I want to, Linda and Shauna and James worked with the properties to determine, okay, hey, do you want to distribute these in your rooms? Do you want to put them at the front desk in certain areas of your various hotels? And I'm happy to say 17 properties said yes. And so on March 1st, James actually delivered just over 2,400 guides to those 17 properties. So I think it's a great way. I know, these folks are already in Carson City, but again, showing them what else they may not know is out there to do while they're here staying in our hotel properties. So we're going to continue with sort of a quarterly distribution of those guides, where we'll reach back out and see if the properties can take another allocation. And then we're also going to expand that to the different cultural properties, whether it's Stewart or it's the Capitol or a museum or whatever the case may be, expand beyond non-lodging properties to see if they would be willing to showcase or feature our guide in their respective buildings as well. So that concludes my executive director report, and I'm happy to address any other questions that any of the board may have.
Dave, have you had a chance to reach out to the properties, the hotel properties, and introduce yourself and, kind of?
For the record, Dave Peterson. Yeah, little by little. I'm working sort of through one property at a time as things have come up. Obviously, I had a chance to meet Dean. So yeah, I am working through that. I can't say that I've met with every particular general manager. We have been working on a database to who is the general manager, who's the salesperson, who's the marketing person. So not only just for me, but also Lydia to be able to engage if there's a marketing person and a salesperson on James' side of things as well. I'm learning there is some turnover that happens. So just when I do make a phone call and want to talk with them, oh, they're not here. They've moved on. But yeah, I am slowly working my way through property by property. Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions for the, want to give us a grant update?
Yeah, so for the record, Dave Peterson, I'm going to kick this over to Lydia, who's just going to talk about a couple of the grants that we had not engaged in. And so, but what I want to just mention is we do have several grants, and I don't know if it's 15 or so grants, but we, at this point, are fully up to speed, running on those grants. We're actually going to be working over the next month or so to get reimbursements back for those grants that have already concluded and the money has been spent, the match is there. But I wanted Lydia to address a couple of the grants as kind of follow-up to last month's meeting where we didn't really have an update for you at that time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lydia.
Sure, we made some progress on 2 of the grants, and really those are the last 2 big ones that we had to fulfill. Everything else has been pretty much in the works, but our first one is a grant that we got for influencers to come into Carson City. So I'm working with an agency who's going to be bringing 4 to 5 influencers in, and her and I will be actually leading a familiarization tour with these influencers. So we're not just going to have them, hey, come to Carson City and have your trip. We'll do a couple of influencers to come in and do that, so they have a organic, unique experience of their own. But we're going to be also touring them around Carson and really honing in on that Your Nevada experience starts here. So we'll see how easy it is to get to some of the other areas that maybe aren't exactly Carson City, but show them what a really great trip in Carson looks like. So maybe bringing them up to the lake, doing the crystal kayak tours, but having them come down and showing them how quick it is to get back down to Carson City, have lunch at one of our great restaurants, and then we'll be highlighting the properties that we'll be staying at as well and partnering with whoever we can on that facet to make it a great trip and really make that worthwhile. And the second, a second grant is focusing on social media advertising. So we are building an entire campaign right now from scratch and using the videos that we just made for the winter that I showed you at the last meeting very briefly. And we've had some incredible views. Some of them have over 45,000 views already, and some of them are focusing on just the museum side. Some are focusing on Carson in general. And it's been a great hit, and I've seen some conversation about, oh, hey, we should go to Carson City for the weekend. They're tagging their friends. I'm responding, start planning already, and just make it engaging and fun. And so we're really seeing a great return on that in just a couple of weeks. And we have quite a good budget to spend before June. So I'm excited to show the impact and results of that when we get there.
Anything else?
No.
All right.
Thank you, Lydia.
Chris, transit occupancy report?
So we didn't bring you November last meeting because we had a few properties that hadn't reported yet. We also have, in the top 5, this year compared to last year, we've gone down $288,743.70. The numbers, I verified the numbers, but we're not really sure of the why. So we're going to reach out to the properties and find out if they have any kind of information as to the who, what, why, whens. So these reports are a little bit skewed, I think, right now. And then David and I are going to work together to come up with a better system to make these. Yeah. And I think that's part of it, and I think that's part of why we're seeing such a big decrease in the year overall because, 17 and 16, we're reporting like 28% up, and now we're reporting 10% down. So David and I just want to really get into the deep and make sure that everything's good and clean here. So that's why I brought to the November one back was because we had discussed that and the occupancy was there. So do you guys have any questions on November? Because I want to make sure Mark has time.
I guess if you kind of throw 17 out, we're tracking Better than
start
16.
fresh and, yeah. And I mean, like, as far as the revenue is concerned, we're still on track with what we budgeted. So I'm not too concerned with that part of it, but, it'd just be nice for Dave and I to be able to get in here and really make sure that everything is golden. So as for December, everything's looking good in December. The only difference is we're down a little bit in the remaining column, about 8,586. What I've seen a lot of is happening here is a lot of the 28-day stays are really starting in the smaller properties. And a lot of them are transitioning, like an owner will come in and then flip it. And so I'm having trouble tracking reports. We're getting a little better, but there are a lot of them where we're not bringing any revenue in because they're full of 28-day stays, whereas a couple years ago, they weren't full. So that's kind of the trend we're seeing there. And then David's going to speak to you a little bit more unless you guys have questions on this. I just didn't want to run through all these numbers and have Mark not be able to speak, so that's why I'm a little quick.
And just with respect to the time and letting Mark do his presentation, for the record, Dave Peterson, I just want to add to what Chris said. We will work with each of the individual properties just to isolate and identify those drops by property. And obviously, we can't share that information publicly because it's proprietary and unique to each property. But I really do want to understand, because I heard the FEMA come up, I think it was at the November meeting, oddly enough, that was a big impact. And trying to assess with the rate drop, and does that have to do with GSA rates, right? Where you're at the $93 rate relative to what those properties would have been charging if FEMA, hadn't come in and taken over the city, so to speak. But also trying to back into the individual months, right, that were impacted. Is it several months? Is it 1 month, 2 month, or 2 months that were impacted? So we are gonna do a deep dive on this. Hopefully, we'll be able to provide some clarity at the April meeting, and if not, for sure for the May meeting. But Chris and I are committed to figuring out what's going on there with the numbers. So that way, I think we all have a little better picture of what took place, and we may find there's something else that was going on as well, for the fall.
I think one of the properties was going through a remodel. Yeah, also, and so there were a lot less rooms in the market available. So I think you'll find that too.
Yeah, for the record, Dave Peterson, yes, and that's exactly the second concern that Chris and I have been chatting about for the last week or so, as Chris has been working on the report, is renovations and the impact that they had, obviously, on room availability in general, and then maybe even rates as well. So.
Okay, so basically, no alarms.
No, not concerned at all at this point. I think, as Joel mentioned at the January meeting, we're going to have some increase, right, from having the legislative session, which started in February through that first week of June. So at this point, we're tracking okay. If we go back to the revenue page, we're actually, I think are we slightly ahead, in terms of being through the accounting period. So I feel okay at this point relative to what was projected for lodging tax revenue.
Thank you. Mark Salinas, Arts and Culture Coordinator for the city. Thanks for having me. I'm on a steady diet of Dayquil and caffeine, so bear with my cough. But I wanted to give the board an update on a recent event. February 26th was 2 weeks ago. Carson City Arts taking flight. I presented it briefly to this board and to city earlier. Back in September of 2018, I reached out to the marketing team of the Reno Tahoe Airport, seeing where we could get our foot in the door as far as showing some artwork from Carson City. That meeting paid off into collaborating with all these great organizations, and I have some images and details to run through by you. So we were given 200 linear feet of airport space, which is shown in these two images. These are not the shows. This is just for architectural renderings of the space. And my original proposal was to exhibit in the airport some of these painted parasols that were from the 2017 Nevada Day Parade, a parade of arts and entertainment. A number of these were on display in the treasurer's office, and when I went to meet with the marketing team, they fell in love with these, and as we talked over the phone, they gave me more and more space to fill up on the walls, to a point where I had to reach out to some friends, and so I reached out to WNC and Nevada Arts Association, giving them each a certain footage of wall space, and had them self-curate their pieces and let me know how they can participate in this. Of course, we had to draw up loan paperwork, and this is the fun part of actually, buying bin boxes, buying straps, renting dollies and blankets, and renting a U-Haul during the blizzard to pick up these works. So we had three consolidated pickup spots: City Hall, the Nevada Artists Association, and WNC. And this is sort of behind the magical curtain, how this stuff happens. So this is the actual space, and as you can see, it takes up a lot of room there. I did have help from the union employees there at the airport in unpacking some of the stuff. But to get things expedited, I did have to reach out to the organizations, and they helped unpack and hang the works. Concurrent with the actual hands-on, I was also designing a logo and making some buttons in preparation for the actual reception itself. I thank Lydia for helping me get the word out and helping come up with the aesthetics for the reception advertisement. So here you see Carson City Arts Taking Flight, an inaugural arts exhibition at the Reno Tahoe International Airport, a group exhibition of 53 artists. Those are the three organizations. It was actually 80 artworks. Mayor Kroll was kind enough to put his name on the reception as a speaker. Because the exhibition is in Terminal C, it's past TSA, and so attendees were urged to RSVP in advance. And so the IT department here in Carson put up this page so we could have just one central location of signups, and then forward those to TSA. Once I had the mayor booked, then I reached out to Mayor Limora. If you recall, I think she was here maybe 2 months ago presenting to you. Assemblywoman Sarah Peters from District 24 in Reno, Dr. Vincent Solis from the president of Western Nevada College, David Peterson, and then my two colleagues who work on arts and culture in Reno, Alexis Hill and Megan Berner. And so that was sort of the itinerary there for the evening. We had 187 people RSVP online for the reception. That's enough to fill a Boeing 757. So just the concept of Carson City bringing an airplane full of people to the show, I think, is spectacular. Once we had the artwork up on the wall, the airport staff did lighting and labels. These are some of the painted parasols. These are some works from the Nevada Artists Association. They're located there at the BAC. This is their 40th year being there in that location. So I wanted to give them a hand up on getting advertising their efforts. This is the opening night. Chairman Jones, thank you for attending. We had a full Carson City Cultural Commission there. I thank the CTA staff for attending as well. Supervisor Barrett was there. Of course, the mayor, former Mayor Pro Tem Karen Abad was there as well. There's a fantastic video that Rachel Schneider in our IT department put together, and I urge you to see it. If you go to Facebook, either Mark Salinas or Carson City Cultural Commission, it's posted on either one. It's a fantastic 4-minute video and highlights a lot of spectacular moments. So 200 linear feet, 24/7 of airport advertisement space from February to April. We installed these the week of the start of the legislative session, and these will be up until April 26th. Because of the weather and, as you can see, the logistics involved in doing this, we decided to have the reception the third week of February. My friend Michael, one of the founders of Burning Man, and his wife showed up. And this is an interesting light box that was there when we were installing the work. 75% of air travelers are likely to visit a tourist attraction after learning about it at the airport. And that just kind of summarizes the entire the strategy in putting together something like this. And, you know, stepping back now, I can see how, you know, and I've been very vocal about this, the end game in this was to knock the socks off of the airport so much that they would invite us back every legislative session to have that sweet spot. And I think that's going to happen. So here's some of the media. So these are my colleagues in Reno. Double Scoop, Nevada is the former arts editor for the Reno News and Review. So that was on Instagram. The Reno Tahoe Airport advertised it on Twitter. Several of the artists posted pictures on Facebook. I reached out to KUNR. They did an interview that has a lot of hits on it. That has both some words from me and David on this. Channel 2 was there. They actually showed footage that evening. I'm waiting for, it's not uploaded onto their website, but I spoke to the producer and he's going to send me that link. And once I have that, I'll post that on Facebook. We were on NBC4 Reno's website, Fox 11 Reno's website. Reno Arts News was there reviewing the show. This is a really good article in Carson Now with a lot of great photographs of the event. WNC also put out an article. And of course, the news release of the airport itself. And in Marilyn Morrow's own words, this was the largest arts event that the airport has ever had. So that is an abbreviated how-to, or how that thing occurred and is occurring now. For more images, stay tuned for our 5:30 meeting. But, you know, I was speaking recently to a group, and, you know, the funding for the arts, I believe, is funding for community engagement. And I think, you know, going back to this, if you look at all these people and all these organizations that they're from, I mean, that's really what community engagement is right there on one screen. And I think that there's, you know, the mayor said this is a proud moment for Carson City. And a lot of the artists that showed up there, I hadn't known and I hadn't met before. And so it was a learning experience for me as well. I think there's so much room to grow. And I think this is pretty example of how Carson City's art can maybe hit the road. You know, the Nevada Arts Council, our state arts agency, they have something called the traveling, they produce traveling shows, and these hit rural communities that don't have the funding or the population sometimes to put together a show. But this, you know, this was such a success. And, you know, and mind you, you know, so now all of these 53 artists have an additional line item in their resume. Each of these pieces have additional line item in the provenance, which is the exhibition history of the piece, which increases its value. So, you know, there might be room to, you know, to entertain a proposal in the future to maybe put together a Carson City art show and put that on the road and see how that fares, you know. So a lot of, I think there were a lot of happy artists with this, and I thank the CTA for attending the event, helped me lock down some of those logistics, because this was quite a biggie. Probably the biggest thing I've done I mean, that True Grit thing last year was pretty big too, but for a one night only reception, there was a lot of logistics, a lot of special people that were there. So that was just sort of my presentation. I know I presented at the DBA briefly the other night. I'll be mentioning this briefly at the Reno Tahoe Territory this Wednesday. But if there was any other questions or.
No, I thought it was a great event, Mark. Thanks for putting it on. I thought there was, like you said, the attendance I thought was amazing. The amount of people that showed up, and there was a buzz and sort of some excitement about, Carson City was, I'm not going to say on the map, but that we were, it made people feel good about Carson City and got us some exposure. And no, I thought it was a fun event. I know that some of the, Trish, you were there, and it was just, I think, very well done. Thank you.
Hey, Mark, I wanted to apologize. I was signed up for that. I had a family illness that I had to deal with, so I'm sorry I missed it because it looks like a great exhibit. And I had a question for you on the exhibit, since I haven't seen it yet. There's a lot of Carson City artists featured, and obviously it's about Carson City arts and culture. Does the exhibit kind of tie in to, hey, come to Carson City, here's what we're doing with the arts and culture in town, here's businesses that are supporting the arts and culture, restaurants, that kind of thing? Is there anything that kind of ties that exhibit to bringing people here?
Sure. So this was the graphic for the invite, but it was also the template for panels that we had hanging on the wall, 20 inches by 30 inches, I believe. So there was an introductory panel explaining the show, and then each one of the organizations had their own panel. Because this is space that is given to us, we cannot actively promote it, but every panel had a Facebook, the website had additional information, how to get in touch. There was a counter there where we had pamphlets. The wall itself, I believe, is owned by Clear Channel. And so there was some back and forth discussion about what we could post on the wall and what we couldn't.
No, I just want to say great job, Mark. That's putting Carson City on the map like that, getting the word out about our arts. Great job.
Yeah. Well, Mark, thanks for coming and giving us a little recap and an update, and hopefully, I'm sure the board, hopefully you won't be a stranger, and they would like for you to come, I don't know, when you can, and give us an idea of what's happening, what you see happening in the arts community going into fiscal year 1920. And I'm sure you're already planning for all kinds of fun things and what you're doing. I'm sure we'd love to, kind of hear that and go, the next time you stop by. All right. Anything else? All right. Future agenda items, David?
We will bring back, for the record, Dave Peterson, we'll bring back the actual contracts that I'll be working on with KPS3 and Computer Artistry to the meeting in April. And then, as I mentioned, of course, we'll hopefully have our selection for the web digital development CRM vendor as well. And if there are any things in particular that you all would like to see on the agenda. I think this is when Mark doesn't have a meeting, so we do have a little bit of, maybe extra 15 minutes if we want to add a presentation or anything. Happy to work on that.
No, I just we hope to have the web development in, May, and then maybe, start seeing some changes in June.
Yeah, I fully plan, I don't want to speak for Lydia, but, if we can get the web development, from a web perspective, by all means. We're going to, day after that board meeting, we're going to hit the ground running on the web front because we'll already have our content creative PR firm in place. So, I fully expect the day after the April meeting that we'll hit the ground running from that perspective. But yeah, we're not going to waste any time. So we have some work ahead of us on the website, some fixes and things that we need to do, and once we get .com up and fully functional and running, then I want to switch gears to the .biz site as well, so we can start building our partner portal out, excuse me. So, yeah. Good stuff coming for fiscal '20.
Great. Yeah, you mentioned upcoming meeting, April 8th, right here. Same place, same time, 4 o'clock. This time I'll ask for any board comments or announce or requests for information. Anyone would like to see anything presented next board meeting?
I'm just excited to hear what happens with Conica and see how they have to straighten this mess out. But, and then one more thing too, I just want to say, thanks for keeping somebody local. I think, Computer Artistry, has done a great job for the DBA in the past, and I'm really glad that she was able to become a part of it in one way or the other. And yeah, just try to keep things local. That's how I roll.
I'm sorry, at this time, any other public comment? Anyone that would like to comment on anything? Seeing no public comment, we'll move to item 14, possible action to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
We're adjourned.